2018 CrossFit had more than 15,000 gyms across 162 countries, more locations than Starbucks has in the United States. The ecosystem generates over $4 billion a year, and celebrities like Jessica Alba and Matt Damon swear it's the best workout in the world. Just 6 years later, the company has been sold twice, lost nearly 6,000 gyms, an athlete drowned live during its biggest competition, and the business is up for sale again. Now, the really interesting part isn't how much it lost, but how a billion-dollar brand managed to destroy itself without even needing competition. CrossFit was born in the year 2000, when Greg Glassman and his wife Lauren Janai officially incorporated the company. But the story begins way earlier. Glassman was born in 1956 in California. As a child, he had polio. To regain his strength, he began practicing gymnastics. But at 16 years old, something changed. One day, he combined squats with military press and pull-ups in a routine that lasted only 3 minutes, and he almost threw up from the effort. In just 3 minutes, I achieved that unpleasant feeling you get after a competitive gymnastics routine, he would say years later. I never got that feeling from traditional bodybuilding. During the 1980s and 90s, Glassman worked as a personal trainer in gyms around LA, especially at Gold's Gym. But he had a problem. He kept getting fired. His methods were too noisy, he occupied too much equipment, and he made his clients do crazy things like 5 straight minutes of pull-ups, squats, and bike sprints. For Glassman, traditional gyms were a joke, machines that isolated muscles, exercises with no real-life application, people doing lateral raises while eating pretzels. I invented the idea that doing bicep curls while eating pretzels is stupid, he would say in his characteristic sarcasm. In 2001, they opened their first gym in Santa Cruz, California. Basically a storage unit filled with basic equipment. Ropes for climbing, bikes, rowers, Olympic bars. No mirrors, no luxury. And they began posting free workouts on the internet every single day. In 2002, a guy named Dave Werner from Seattle called Glassman. He wanted to use the name CrossFit for his own gym. Glassman had no idea what an affiliate was. He charged him $500 and gave him permission. Maybe we'll have 5 of these one day, he told his wife. But that accidental model turned out to be brilliant. Unlike traditional franchises that charge hundreds of thousands of dollars in entry fees, control everything you do, and take monthly royalties, CrossFit only charged $3,000 a year, and in exchange, it gave you total freedom. You could open your gym however you wanted, use whatever methods you wanted, charge whatever you wanted. You only needed to pay the annual fee and take the weekend certification course that cost $1,000. It was perfect for passionate trainers who didn't have much capital but wanted to build something of their own. And the growth was explosive. In 2005, there were only 13 affiliates. 3 years later, 500. By 2011, 3,000. In 2013, more than 8,000 CrossFit gyms around the world. And by 2018, more than 15,500 gyms spread across 162 countries. But CrossFit wasn't just a gym. It was a philosophy. A religion, some would say. The idea was simple but revolutionary. Prepare yourself for the unknown and unknowable. Don't train to look good in the mirror. Train so you can handle anything life throws at you. An earthquake, an emergency, a war, or simply picking up your kids without hurting your back. The workouts changed every day. They combined Olympic lifting, gymnastics, running, and rowing. They were brutal, and people loved them. In 2007, Dave Castro convinced Glassman to organize a competition. They called it the Woodstock of Fitness. It was held at the Castro family ranch in ruinous, California. 70 athletes and 150 spectators attended. It looked more like a family barbecue than a sporting event. The prize for the winner? $500. But something magical was happening. CrossFit wasn't just creating a training method, it was creating a sport. In 2011, everything changed. Reebok signed a 10-year deal as the main sponsor. The prize jumped from $25,000 to $250,000. ESPN began broadcasting the event, and most importantly, they launched the CrossFit Open, an online competition open to everyone in the world. 26,000 people participated that first year. By 2018, there were 415,000 people around the world, making it the largest participatory sporting event in the world. The athletes became celebrities. Rich Froning won 4 times in a row. Tia Claire Toomey dominated the women's category. They had millions of followers on Instagram. They appeared in Netflix documentaries. And the money was flowing. By 2015, Forbes estimated that the CrossFit ecosystem generated $4 billion a year. Yes, you read that right, with a B, $4 billion. And here's a dirty little secret no one mentioned. CrossFit Inc., Glassman's company, only made around $100 million a year. Those $4 billion were what all the affiliate gyms made combined. CrossFit had created a gigantic ecosystem, but captured only a tiny fraction of the value. It was as if Apple had created the iPhone, but only made money by selling the name iPhone for $3,000 a year, while other people built and sold the phones. And there were more serious problems building up. Since its early days, CrossFit had a reputation for being dangerous. In 2005, the New York Times published an article titled, "Getting Fit, Even If It Kills You." It wasn't a joke. CrossFit even created a cartoon mascot called Uncle Rabdu, a muscular clown hooked up to a dialysis machine, with his kidneys and intestines falling out onto the floor, standing in a puddle of his own blood. What is rhabdomyolysis? It's a serious medical condition where your muscles break down so catastrophically that they release proteins into your bloodstream that can destroy your kidneys and kill you. Normally, it affects 0.006% of the population per year, but CrossFit documented 5 cases in its first few years. And instead of taking it seriously, they turned it into a mascot. Scientific studies began to appear. One found that 73% of participants reported injuries. Another showed that CrossFit practitioners were 1.3 times more likely to get injured than those who did traditional weightlifting. The most common injuries: shoulders, lower back, and knees. Exactly the areas that get damaged when you perform complex Olympic lifts under extreme fatigue, supervised by a coach whose total certification consisted of a weekend course. But the CrossFit community had an answer for everything. People who criticize CrossFit are weak and afraid of hard work. People who criticize CrossFit are weak and afraid of hard work. It was starting to become a bit of a cult. Ask anyone, how do you know if someone does CrossFit? Don't worry, they'll tell you. CrossFit had all the characteristics of a cult: exclusive language like WOD, box, RX'd, daily rituals, constant evangelical conversion, strict dietary control through the paleo diet that eliminated grains, dairy, and legumes, and the glorification of suffering. There was another mascot besides Uncle Rabdu, Pukey the Clown, representing vomiting. People bragged about throwing up after workouts as if it were a badge of honor. A Time magazine article compared it to the Jehovah's Witnesses of fitness. Salon magazine called it a post-apocalyptic paramilitary wet dream. But here's the paradox. That cult-like devotion was exactly what made CrossFit so successful. People didn't just go to work out, they found community, purpose, belonging. In an era when half of Americans reported feeling lonely, CrossFit offered something traditional gyms never could: a tribe. 90% of participants cited the community as the main reason they stayed, and that irrational loyalty was about to be tested in the most dramatic way possible. June 3rd, 2020. The United States is on fire. Protests over the murder of George Floyd are happening across the country. Thousands of companies are releasing statements in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. CrossFit remains silent. June 6th, the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation tweets, "Racism and discrimination are critical public health issues that demand an urgent response. Black Lives Matter." Greg Glassman replies, "It's Floyd-19." Let me repeat that. The founder and CEO of CrossFit made a pun mocking both George Floyd and COVID-19 in the same tweet. But it got worse. That same day, on a Zoom call with gym owners, Glassman said, "We're not mourning for George Floyd. I don't think me or my staff are. Can you tell me why I should mourn for him? Other than it's the white thing to do, give me another reason." The reaction was immediate and devastating. Reebok instantly cancelled its 10-year sponsorship contract, not months later, not quietly, but that very same day. Within the next 48 hours, more than 1,000 gyms began the process of disaffiliation. Rich Froning, CrossFit's most iconic athlete and four-time champion, released a video condemning Glassman's comments. Tia-Clair Toomey, the most dominant female athlete in the sport, threatened to boycott the upcoming competition. Even Rogue Fitness, a brand that had built a multi-million-dollar business around CrossFit, publicly cut ties. On June 7th, Glassman issued an apology, but it was disastrous. He used passive language to deflect responsibility, offered excuses before apologizing, and even praised his own track record of instead acknowledging the damage he had caused. It only made things worse. On June 9th, just 3 days after the tweet, Greg Glassman resigned as CEO of the company he had founded 20 years earlier. 2 weeks later, he put CrossFit up for sale. But 2020 had not finished with CrossFit. The COVID-19 pandemic closed 90% of CrossFit gyms in the United States, 78% globally. Unlike restaurants that could pivot to delivery, gyms had no options. Memberships fell by 70%. Rents kept coming due. Payroll protection loans were not enough. By the end of 2020, between 20 and 25% of CrossFit gyms had closed permanently. That is more than 3,000 businesses destroyed. And here is the brutal problem with the CrossFit model. The company had no relationship with individual members, only with gym owners. When those gyms desperately needed support, systems, business training, CrossFit Inc. had nothing to offer. Greg Glassman had built an empire by charging $3,000 a year and then leaving affiliates to survive on their own. Let the cream rise to the top was his philosophy, Darwinian selection. That philosophy worked in good times. In a global crisis, though, it was a disaster. In July 2020, CrossFit was sold to Eric Roza, an entrepreneur who had sold his previous company to Oracle for $1.2 billion. Roza owned a CrossFit affiliate and genuinely loved the sport. The sale price was never officially revealed. Estimates range from $100 million to much less. What we do know is that Glassman's ex-wife received only $20 million for her 50% in the divorce agreement. If the company had truly been worth $4 billion, that number makes no sense. The reality, CrossFit was never really worth $4 billion. The ecosystem generated $4 billion, sure. The company was worth a fraction of that. Roza tried to restore the brand. He published statements about fighting racism and sexism. He brought back the social media accounts. He tried to rebuild relationships with affiliates, but the damage was already done. On August 8, 2024, the CrossFit Games began in Fort Worth, Texas. The first event, a 5.6-kilometer run, followed by 800 meters of swimming. Lazar Dukic, a 28-year-old Serbian athlete competing in his fourth games, began to struggle 100 meters from the finish line.
This morning, the CrossFit community is remembering the life of Lazar Dukic. The 28-year-old died after drowning during a competition in Fort Worth.
You can see him stop swimming and seem to struggle just meters away from the finish line. He eventually disappears beneath the water.
The live cameras showed Dukic struggling in the water. A lifeguard on a paddleboard approached, then moved away without rescuing him. An hour later, the fire department's diving team recovered his body. Lazar Dukic drowned, live, during the broadcast, with lifeguards present who did not rescue him. CrossFit cancelled Thursday's events, but on Friday, they announced that the games would continue. They said that Dukic's family had blessed the decision. His brother, Luca, later posted on Instagram that it was a lie. Dave Castro had asked him whether they should continue, then said that decision was not up to him. Laura Horvath, the 2023 Women's Champion, withdrew in protest. Jeffrey Adler, the 2023 Men's Champion, did the same. Dozens of other athletes followed them, but the games went on. In the following months, another 1,400 gyms cancelled their affiliations. Registration for the 2025 CrossFit Open dropped by 30%, from 350,000 to 234,000 participants. CrossFit refused to release the results of the independent investigation they had promised. In March 2025, just 5 years after buying CrossFit, Berkshire Partners announced that the company was up for sale again. In 2018, CrossFit had 15,000 affiliated gyms. By 2025, fewer than 10,000. In 2018, 415,000 participants joined the Open. By 2025, only 234,000. In 2018, estimated revenue was $100 million. By 2025, it was down to $82 million. CrossFit created a $4 billion ecosystem, but captured only $100 million of it. It built one of the most loyal communities in fitness, yet alienated it through racism and negligence. It revolutionized how millions of people train, but refused to evolve as a business. I won't drag this out any longer. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe. I've got plenty more stories like this on my channel. Thank you for watching. Bye-bye.